Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Thought Ladies podcast / Women's Cave. I don't know. I got confused. I started and I was like, I'm going with the ladies' tales. And then I was like, no, it isn't. It's going to be a writing class. I'm like, we're not talking about writing. So I was like, oh, I know what it is. It's one of the Thought Ladies podcasts. And I recognize that's not what we call the show. So, welcome to the show, y'all. I'm Winona, and I'm one of the, guess what, Thought Ladies. And we wrote books, literary life guides with pop poetry. And I thought divorce was bad. And I thought being grown up was easy. If only I were me, a memoir in verse. Whittles Web, Whittles Debt, and Foreign Coffee. That's 6 of them. They can all be found wherever you get your audio books. And then we have 11 more where you can find all that information at www.andithoughladies.com. Before I roll out of here with talking about my guests, I just want to show y'all I am wearing our fashion line shoes today.
Oh,
boom! Oh, hold on, you got to see the other one. Oh, got caught in my purse. They are so cute. They're making a special appearance because I'm getting a piercing today. So I was like, I need to feel like I'm important and strong. So I wore shoes for my own clothing line. All right. That's enough about me. You're not here to hear about me. You're here to hear about our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would love to, although I do feel now I need to hear more about you, but I will introduce myself. My name is Erika Lance, and I run the Drinking with Authors podcast. I'm the host of it. I am also the CEO of the publishing company for Horsemen Publications. And yes, I see the look on your face. Yes, we have a publishing company that we've had for 2 years. We're up to almost 250 titles published. So yes, I decided that, and the reason that I have Drinking with Authors as well is writing is hard. It's very hard work. And as a community, we need to come together, and that's not just writers, but it's publishers, editors, typesetters, cover artists. We need to be there supporting each other and helping each other, because we're an art form that I think some people forget that it's an art form because you do paintings and stuff like that. People go, oh, that's art. Well, write a 900 page novel or whatever, or 200 page, write a 60,000 word novel. You try that. It is an art form.
I normally don't interject here. I normally only interject. I want you to write that without using the same sentence twice to describe something. Because we tend to do that. Because if you list the same adjectives, people notice.
Yes, and there's, if you're not a great author, you'll do a lot of shrugging and nodding in your book. And they said, and he said, and then she said, and then they said, and then there are pitfalls, but you have to get better at it. You have to be better at describing things. You can't just say, she was pretty, she was pretty, she was pretty, she was pretty. You have to describe things differently. And it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of imagination, because generally when you think of a story, you don't realize that you're thinking of almost like an episodic TV series when you're writing a book, because it's not just one moment in time. It's several moments that lead in an arc. So it's an art form. And as a community, I wanted to basically bring the publishing apocalypse. I want to change it. I don't want it to be that artists can't have their voice out there. So I decided to do something about it. And anyway, that is me in a nutshell. Well, tiny nutshell.
I just want to thank you so much for, first of all, in your nutshell, including everybody else who writes out here. Because you think about when you're like, oh, there's singers, you can break into the market on a TV show. Oh, there's artists, there's all that. You can break into the market doing something if you're a visual art. No one wants to watch you write a book. No. Honestly, we don't want to watch us write a book.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we want to. If we set up a mirror to watch ourselves write books. Oh, and I'm an author. I didn't even say that. I'm an author too. I write horror stories under Erika Lance. None of them have a happy ending. So if you're one of those kind of people, don't pick up one of my books. And I have a pen name that I write humorous erotica, which is Dahlia Lance. So yes.
A horror author with humorous erotica. I'm sorry. I'm going to focus on the fact that you're a publisher because we don't often get to chat with. Oh, well, that's not true. We do.
I was going to say, I've seen your show. Yes, you do. With publishers. You can ask me anything you'd like, please.
Well, first of all, no, I lied. I'm going to start off with this because I have like 7 questions in my head. So I'm picking one. I'm starting at the beginning, y'all. Props to me because I normally never do this. Why did you start a writing career in the first place? See, I did it at the beginning.
I love that. I actually, when I was very young, wrote a lot, just wrote a ton. And of course, I wrote those famous novels that start out with it was a dark, stormy night. Never start a book like that. But I wrote a lot of when I was younger. And then my mother had one of those old Macintosh computers that were the little white boxes. And I had written 2 books on there. I don't even remember how long they were. I was a teenager and it got fried by lightning. At the time we lived in Florida. And I stopped. I was devastated. I stopped. And I want to say it was about 17 years ago. I was like, I miss doing this. I miss creating stories. So I was fortunate to get involved in a local writers group. And I wrote for the first time ever. And I wrote a short story that was published in one of their anthologies called Jimmy. And it was so much fun. And I remembered and rekindled my love of art and my love of telling stories. I love reading stories to people and watching their reactions or having people read my stories. I've been fortunate. I've had a couple actors read my stories at like events, and when they read them and everybody's head kind of turns like, what just happened? Then I'm like, I did it. I wrote it. And I love having that emotional impact and having people laugh or cringe or whatever at my work. And so that's where I started again.
Love this. I love hearing about how you started again. Because I think it's wonderful when people find their love for art again, especially writing. Because there's so much to tell in between those gap years of when you stopped when you're a teenager. And now you're like so grown. I mean, there's so much information there to just pull from and emotion and learning. And that's great. For me, because, you know, I am the narcissist, so I got to talk about me.
Please do, please. We are learning things.
For me, it's been kind of fun because I never officially stopped. I mean, I opened my own publishing house, but I wrote those novels that started the publishing house in the first place, and then I expanded it. So I never officially full-fledged stopped. So I've been writing since I was 10, professionally since I was 10. So
wow, that is awesome. No, that's amazing. I love hearing writers' stories and journeys, and that you opened a publishing house and you're doing that, because that's a whole other dynamic. That's not writing, that's publishing. And I think people get confused that when you're a self-published author, that you're just an author. No, you're an author and you're a publisher, right? And there are 2 different skill sets that go with being an author and a publisher. And I think it's amazing when somebody's able to do that.
Now, if you ever invite me on your show, I'll tell you the whole story.
You are welcome on my show. We will set that up next, and you will tell me the whole story, and we will have beverages, because that's the cool part of drinking with authors, is we can get drunk and talk about stuff. So,
oh, well, if we're really gonna do this, and you know, I gotta talk about my cocktail recipe poetry book.
See, you're gonna have to send me the recipes in advance so we can both have recipes while on the podcast. I'm a huge fan of that.
So you keep talking about this podcast, so I gotta ask, tell us the name first of the podcast and then how it got started.
So the podcast is called...
Sorry, I lied, because you told me how it got started. I apologize. What's some fun things that have happened on it? Because you told us how it got started.
Well, so the podcast, of course, COVID changed everything. We used to do it in person. Now we don't do it in person. But I think some amazingly fun things is, one, I've gotten to talk to authors who are just beginning their career or self-published, all the way up to New York Times best-selling, like Jonathan Mayberry's and Melinda Snodgrass's and Charles Gannon. And being on the podcast has created its own community with authors. because it's interesting. You know, I started it mainly because I just love talking to authors, of course, but I found that if you listen to the podcast, I have people that listen that are not authors that just find it entertaining hearing the human side of the people that write the books they love to read, right? The fans get to hear, because I don't ask boring questions. Like I make it fun. It's, you know, the author's
Oh, like
podcast.
I'm asking right now, not those questions.
No, you're not asking boring questions, but I get told a lot by authors that they'll go on podcasts or they'll go on shows and they get asked the same like 10 questions, and you know, they have the same rote answers. Well, it's very different if you're, you know, doing shots of whiskey with Jonathan Mayberry and talking about manatees. Like, you know, those kind of things happen. And for authors, it's, to me, you get to hear the stories of how other authors do what they do. So if you haven't found your most successful way to be a writer, you can get on, listen to the show and find little tidbits and try them and see if they work. Because some people are those like die hard, quiet room, go in, type for 5 hours a day, you know, and then there are people that have real lives and children and sneak away at 2 o'clock in the morning and have to do, you know, their typing and stuff like that. And then, so I love that you have the community and you get to hear the stories of how they made it. And some are really lucky, and some, you know, Stephen King, 5 million rejection letters later, and then they make it. So I think it's a really good resource. Plus I get to meet all the cool people that do what I do.
So I have to ask, because we get asked this question a lot, and when I'm saying we, I'm Winona, but there's normally a Jade. So not like I feel like I am a we.
Wasn't sure if you're going with your multiple personalities. I was just going to go with it. Like,
yeah.
We back here too.
I'm so sorry. I normally do that at the beginning, but I'm still thinking about this piercing and my shoes. It's kind of taking over my mind. But yeah, there's normally a Jade that sits next to me, and she keeps me grounded and not.
Yeah. So you're the me of the podcast. I have a co-host that'll be like, and Erika's completely off the rails. Back on again.
So we get asked this question a lot, and since you brought it up, I'm going to ask you this question. And yes, it's one of those 10 questions that people ask. What is your process? Because we never know how to answer that.
So I am a pantser to the 9,000th degree. I don't do outlines. I get an idea in my head, and I won't start writing it until I know the ending. Mm-hmm. And so then I just sit down, and if I get stuck at all, I have friends that I go and I explain what's happening and wait for one of them to tell me something that jogs it free. Now, they might not tell me something I actually use, but I call it the muses. They tell me something that jogs free what needs to happen, and then I just go. So I love to drink. I love to drink. No, that's not. I love to sit and listen.
We love to drink. We're writers.
We do. I like to have either Celtic music on, because it's just music and it's nice if I'm writing, or if it's a horror book, I put on some horror instrumental music, because if I hear words, I start singing along, and then I go into a whole dancing thing, and then nothing's getting done. But I just sit and I listen to music, and I write as much as I can, and then I have to keep away from Facebook and stuff like that, because yes, the detractor, my cell phone really needs to be in the bedroom and not anywhere near me, because I'll be like, let me just check. It's okay. And then I'm like doing whatever on the phone. It's not good. So that's my process. I unfortunately am not one of those people that can write when I've been very stressed out or something like that. So if things are not great, I'm not one of those people that finds light when I go home and write. I'm like, oh, so, and I'm not nearly as fast as a lot of people, but that's my process, and I have a lot of fun with it.
What do you mean you're not nearly as fast as a lot of people? Because some people take them like 2 to 5 years to write a book.
That's true, but the lovely ladies I work with at Horsemen, each individually wrote 320,000 words and 270,000 words last year. So my little trifecta, I'm like, click, 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 click. I don't type like that, but I mean, like I which I'm very slow, but I'm okay with that. I get faster as I go, but that's my process. I do that. I get inspired by watching people and things like that, or seeing places will give me a story. Like, love road tripping, and I'll be driving down the highway and see something and do a voice memo in my phone about some creepy thing. Because right now I'm in the middle of writing the first of a serial killer series called The Florida Hunting Grounds. And it's going to feature different serial killer type situations. And yeah, because Florida is a freak show state. I know.
So
I lived there.
we're jumping. I mean, you've already jumped to Florida's a freak show state. I feel like my jump is just like, whee.
A hop? Are you going to hop?
Yeah, it's like a hop or a skip. Yeah. So
you got the right shoes on for that, though. I'm going to just say, you do.
I can actually play hopscotch in these shoes. I feel like these are hopscotch shoes.
Absolutely.
Okay, see, now I've leaped too. Stop that.
I'm telling you, I'm a terrible. I can be used as a bad example in almost any situation. I'm like, okay, this is what you shouldn't do. Okay, let's go.
But you have the most fun. I mean, what would you write about if you didn't have that much fun?
It's true. I think life is, this is one thing that I think is true for anybody. Life is an adventure. Life is a game. When you're older, we're not mentioning ages on this podcast because we're glorious, wonderfully young women. But, you know, you look, when you're older, you know, our glorious Betty White just passed, right? Which was so sad to me. But when you're that age and you're looking back, what you have is memories. So what are the memories you're creating? You know, are you creating memories where you're going to a work that, even if you like your job, you're not going to be sitting when you're older going, gosh, I like that day I went in and did 3 TPS reports. Like, that's not the memory you're going to have ever. So you should be creating memories all the time that you want to have, because that's your riches when you get older. You know, and whatever happens after this life, whatever anybody believes, that's the thing that has the most value to it. It's not going to be how much money you have. You can be surrounded by money, but if you don't have amazing memories of fun times and great people you were with and things you look back and laugh and smile, then what the hell is it all about?
I love this. And I still haven't asked the question.
No, you haven't. I'm sorry.
I'm so late for this piercing appointment now. I'm sitting here. I can see the receptionist.
That's okay. She ask your question, then we can get you to your getting poked. Wait, what kind of piercing are you getting? You're sharing piercing. What kind of piercing are you getting?
Navel piercing, just simple.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah. Very cool.
It's an
You paused long enough. I thought it was in another area. I thought it may be in a cash and prizes kind of area, the way you paused there for a moment.
Because like I was thinking about it and I'm like, should I even discuss piercings on my podcast? Because I mean, does a lady discuss piercings on her podcast? No, she does not. No. The thing that shall not be mentioned that's happening moments after you ask your question. Go for it. Funny moments on the podcast, because you assume drinking and people who create worlds, there have got to be some great imaginative, playful moments on the podcast.
There are. I'll tell you, the moment that threw me off the most was we had an author named MK, and she came on and drinking with us. She's amazing, funny. She's actually from Canada. And so we talk about what we're drinking at the beginning of the podcast so that people can drink along. She pulls out a dark beer and drops a shot into it and did an Irish car bomb, like in the beginning, like totally. I was like, she's like, yeah, I got, and I was like, mic drop. Like, I literally can't even do the podcast now. What am I supposed to do to follow that up with? Right. And it's funny because especially I've been very fortunate to have a few people that are like, let me come back on the show and share, but it's hearing the funny stories, and especially when they had their fan moments. So we're authors, right? But we've had the opportunity to meet people, I'm sure, that you are like, I am such a fan, and you have your fangirl. I call it a fangirl moment, whether you're a male or female or don't identify, because they're like, like, and so I've had that a few times on my podcast where me or one of my hosts, I have to keep us in check because I'm like, we're supposed to be interviewing somebody that we're like, oh my God, you're like the greatest thing in the whole world. I love you. And I'm like, this does not make for good broadcasting.
I think I've got to interview my top 3 favorite authors ever.
Oh, wow.
Well, not top 3. I mean, Mickey Splain's dead, so it doesn't really count.
Did you interview a dead person? Or are you interviewing ghosts? Because I'd love to tap into how we do that.
Right? Okay. No. So like the people after Mickey Splain. So yeah, I got to interview all of them, and yeah, Jade's like, stop it. But my fangirling is not normal fangirling. My fangirling is, what were you doing in the 4th book? I was so happy. Sorry.
Oh, to see that you being happy. It's very funny. We interviewed, and I'm not going to mention the person because they'll know who they are. And we interviewed someone, and one of my co-hosts was so mad about what they did in their latest book to one of their favorite characters. And I didn't know this when they were like, oh, I want to co-host with that. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then they were like, so in the 4th book, and I saw it coming. It was almost like, like this premonition thing. And I was like, what was your writing experience for that book? And I literally grabbed my phone and I texted my co-host and I'm like, don't you dare.
Oh, I did. I surely did. And I was
like, really?
The reasoning. And we're good friends. I just sent her a baby gift.
I love that. I love that.
She's read my books, and they're trash. My books are trash. So she's read everything.
Oh my God. Great.
No, because I published the book I wrote. Like, I wrote my first novel, my first like full 200 and some page novel when I was 12, and I just like published it as is recently.
Oh wow.
So that's trash.
Well, it's funny. So one of the anthologies that we publish it for Horsemen is called Teen Angst. And we request submissions from writers or anyone of their like diary pages, the poems they wrote, the love letters they wrote or received, the songs they wrote. Because we all went through that stage when we were younger where the world was ending over whatever person we were interested in. And, I'm never going to survive angst, bangs in the face, whatever it was for us. And so we published an anthology of all of that ridiculousness. Unedited, whatever. It's literally copies of the journal pages and stuff.
Exactly. So, and you just look at it and go, oh goodness, what was I doing? But I need to ask where people can, how people can submit, what you're looking for right now for your for Horsemen Publishing, and then we're going to get to the real self-promotion section.
Okay, so for a Horseman, we are looking for, I want to say anything and everything. Our biggest thing is we look for series authors. So we want authors who want to write and want to write a lot. So we have different levels, which you can look up on our website, which is 4 horsemanpublications.com. And we have a submissions page, and we're looking for good writers. We don't do a lot of, we only do line editing. We only have our editors go in and correct grammar, tenses, that sort of thing. We don't do a whole process. We get books published within maximum 6 months from when the manuscript is turned in. When we do audiobooks, print books, ebooks, hardcover books, depending on the book, obviously, some erotic books don't end up in hardcover because amazingly people don't want to be sitting at a Barnes and Noble with one in their hand. But we have every different kind of writer you can imagine, but we want a lot of the stories that people go, when this didn't fit in the genre box. We want those stories and the stories that do. We have hockey romance writers all the way down to high fantasy, male, orc human erotica books. Like we have the whole gamut. So that's what we're looking for, is we want good authors who actually just want to write, do not want to do the self-publish, or if they have been doing the self-published, we've had several people who come over from other publishers, other self-publishing and stuff like that, because they just want to write. They want to write and do those things. So that's what we're looking for. And we have distribution through what's called Core Source, which is the same distribution channel as HarperCollins and Macmillan and stuff like that. So that's our distribution. It's not just like Barnes and Noble, Kobo, iBooks, Amazon. We go the whole gamut with everything. And it doesn't cost the authors anything to do it. So we're not a vanity press.
I was just about to ask that one to make sure, because you're sounding really nice. Because
yes,
I might be sending a book over or two.
That would be awesome. Feel free.
Noted, they're still trash, but I might be sending a book over.
No, totally. It's amazing the authors we found. We have everything from high fantasy to interracial romance to interracial erotica to it's the vampire romance to it. If you look on our site, we have young adult, we have middle grade books. We just want authors that are good writers that want to write to get their work out there. Because, a lot of times you pitch, but if you don't fit in a box for somebody, you're on your own. And unless you're a marketing person or very, very lucky, self-publishing is a lot of work for people. And there's a lot of traps and there's a lot of costs, and you'll get these emails saying, hey, I'll publish your book. I'll do this and you pay me this and you pay me that, or I'll advertise your book. And it's amazing because our authors send us the emails and we're like, nope, absolutely not. No, because it's trash. There's just trash and it doesn't help. So.
All right. So now let's talk about you and where we can find your books and support, and how can we support this podcast?
Well, you can find the podcast on pretty much anywhere a podcast. We're on Amazon, iTunes, Spotify, several other places that apparently grab podcasts from there. If you just look up Drinking with Authors, that's the podcast. I found somebody tried to steal the name and created Day Drinking with Authors. Do not fall for that. And it's interesting. Anyway, so it's Drinking with Authors. And then, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram at Drinking with Authors. And then for me, my books are pretty much everywhere as well, like I just talked about. But if you go to Amazon and look up Erika Lance, Erika, and then it's Lance like the weapon, and you'll find my horror books, or I'm also on the fourhorsemen.com website that leads to wherever you like to buy books. So if you click on there, it's got links that go to wherever you prefer to purchase your books and stuff like that. And we have a lot of conventions and stuff like that. I'm knocking on my wood desk, barring that the Omni kind of closes down a little bit, because obviously we want it to be safe for anybody to come out, but you can always come see us at one of our events, and I'd love to sign a book for you or take pictures or scare the crap out of you. I mean, it just depends on what you're into. So
I recognize I completely forgot to ask a question, and so I'm going to just throw it in right here, although we've wrapped up, and then I'm going to ask about your socials, so it'll look like we actually did this correctly to Jade, or we sound like it. So I forgot to ask, you said this started off as an in-person event. What was the in-person event?
The podcast in-person event? Oh yeah. So it started off with, there was a local literary thing in Tampa called Wordier Than Thou. And so they came up with the idea, and it was me and a friend of mine that were co-hosting it, to go do a book club called Critical Drinking, but of local authors. And the first time we did this book club, the author showed up. It was at a wine bar. And I was like, okay, how the hell do you do like a book review with the author sitting right there? So instead we got to ask the author questions. Didn't invite them, they just showed up. Next time, same thing, they just showed up. So I was like, we just need to change the format of this and invite these authors, local authors, to show up, drink some wine with us and have this. And then after a few of these, I was like, we're funny. We should be on a podcast. We should be doing this. And then Drinking with Authors was born.
This sounds great. So that means now I have to do the final wrap-up question. I'm glad I saved it back, because I was like, oh, I made a mistake. was an advantage.
It wasn't a mistake. It was a tactically set up thing.
Exactly. Are there any social medias that you feel that people can follow you on that you want to let anyone know about?
I would Instagram author Lance, Erika Lance on Facebook. Four Horsemen, you can follow at Four Horsemen Publications or Four Horsemen Pubs, usually on Instagram, Twitter, and then Drinking with Authors. I don't know if people are Insta people, if they're Twitter people, if they're Facebook people. We even have for Four Horsemen, we're doing a TikTok. So that's we're talking in the ticking. I'm not actually 100% sure about that myself. But anyway, figuring that out with our media people. But yes, you can look me up in any of those places, and please feel free to reach out. And if you have questions, we're here to help people. So if you want to be on my podcast, reach out to me at drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com. You can be on my podcast. If you want questions about publishing, same thing. You could reach out to us at Four Horsemen Publications and on any of these social medias. We're here to help people be successful.
Awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by today, Erika Lance, and then talking about Drinking with Authors. I have had a blast. I have not been drinking, which is kind of sad for me, but that's okay. If I ever come on your podcast, I'll do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to demand drink recipes, and you and your co-host have to come on my podcast. I would love that. But I know you've got to get to the receptionist glaring at you through the fog that's there.
It's not that bad that I can't see her. That's the problem.
I love that.
Okay. I'm gonna wrap it up for us over here. I'm Winona, and there was a missing Jade today. So what? I got to have fun. You can find out everything that your ladies are up to at www.andithoughladies.com. When you go there, go down to the bottom of the page and you can see the charities that we proudly support. You can also give them a little help. You know, it's kind of hard out here, you know, with Omicron floating about. So they definitely need the assistance. We look forward to you doing that, and we thank you in advance. Remember that wisdom is all around you if you're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Winona and the missing Jade. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.